Hello and welcome. My name is Josh Singh. I'm your host of the Racial Healing Podcast. Welcome. I'm really glad you're here. I started this podcast because I had to do something. I struggled for a long time to figure out what to do about racism. I've always been an ally. I've done my own work around overcoming my own pain and trauma around racism. And I've always known that that is not really enough. So I started this podcast for people to share their stories, to be heard, and for you, the listener, to witness those stories. And my hope is that we can all heal our hearts and our souls from listening and being part of this podcast together. So thank you for being here. Please consider subscribing, and I hope you enjoyed today's interview. So I think you're officially the person who's officially come from farthest away to do this.
Thank you.
3.5 hours? 3 hours?
3 hours.
3 hours. Not bad. How was the traffic?
Not bad.
Yeah.
It's the middle of the day.
Nothing.
No. I mean, there was people, but just normal Chicago, I think.
And the podcast is not the only thing that brought you to Chicago.
No.
Right?
So it's my boyfriend's 45th birthday.
Wow.
Last week, and so I have a big surprise weekend planned, and he doesn't know anything yet. He recently figured out that we were coming here for the weekend, but there's other things planned as well.
What? And he's in the room right now. You're
Yes.
sort of looking at him a little bit, and I'm looking at him now too. He doesn't have a microphone. Eric, does not have a microphone,
No.
so he's not going to get the privilege of speaking on this podcast today.
No.
Has it been hard to keep everything quiet?
I'm actually more surprised that all the people I've told have also kept it quiet.
Yes.
So I had people to talk to about it, and friends that were involved, but I've just been pretty impressed that everyone has helped me keep a secret, which is
very impressive.
Yeah, I'm not very good at keeping secrets, so
yes,
it's been helpful.
The only thing like this is my wife Thara threw a 30th birthday party for me, surprise party, and I found out about it. I think in 3 different ways.
Oh no. See,
so it's hard to pretend like I was surprised when I got there.
I have never done anything like this before, and he actually just threw me a surprise party for my birthday last month, and so we were kind of planning them simultaneously, but neither one of us knew, but the people that we were talking to both knew that we were both planning something.
Wow, that's a lot to hold.
Yeah, so I think the friends have been more excited they can stop keeping their own secrets.
Like, I can breathe.
Yeah, so I didn't know anything about his. And yes, he's only figured out one thing. He figured out that we were coming here. That's it.
Got it. So you agreed to do this podcast too?
Yeah, this is my first podcast also.
First podcast. Maiden voyage. What made you say yes to this?
I think one is that I think the topic is really interesting, and I enjoy speaking with you in general. So I thought that it would be a nice way to ease into having a conversation like this for other people. Do
you talk about race very often?
I feel like I talk about gender more than race. I don't, and I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into this, but I feel like race sort of falls to the background of my brain, of my thought process. I forget that it's an issue for people looking at me often. So I don't know that I talk about it that much, but gender, I think I talk about more. And
it sounds like you're more aware of how you're seen as a woman than as a what?
As a brown person.
As a brown person,
yeah, I absolutely, like, I am definitely more self-conscious or thought-provoked about interactions with other people in terms of my gender and how that may or may not relate to an experience or a conversation.
Yeah.
Then I honestly forget about the fact that I'm often the only brown person in a room.
Can you give me an example of a time that you're aware of your gender?
At work a lot. So I'm a dentist, and there's sometimes patients will be like, oh, we only want to see a male dentist, or some situations like that. And I happen to currently work in a place where out of the 7 dentists that are there, 2 are men. So we have a situation like often like there's a lot of women here to choose from, but things like that. I think more recently, sometimes I feel like if I'm in a conversation where I'm trying to speak up or speak my mind or be my normal opinionated self, sometimes I feel like if there's a lot of men around that I don't get to have that moment to speak.
As in there's not space for you?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't ever feel like that's race related. I feel like that's just, maybe it's just personality related. I don't know. But my brain defaults to gender issues.
Sure. Is there a correlation between skill as a dentist and gender?
I had a professor tell me once that women are better oral surgeons than men because, and these are so many stereotypes, but that men have a tendency to brute force something out and be like, I am going to get this out, any way I can. And women are better at the delicate finesse and trying to urge it out. So, but I think probably just having smaller hands would be a benefit regardless of your gender.
Got it.
So
I am having a tooth pulled next month.
Are you really? I can do it for
you. Look so happy about that. Why are you so happy about that?
I'm intrigued. I'm professionally intrigued.
Yeah. We'll share it off camera. I'll share it off camera.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, talking with me, you thought would be good to, a good place to sort of explore race for people who might want to listen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I tend to get kind of nervous speaking in front of people, stage frighty, but you're a very comfortable person for me. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yeah. So, tell us about how you identify in terms of race.
That is, I have struggled with that my whole life. So, I'm 100% Indian. I was born in Iran. So some people have identified me as Persian or Iranian, and I don't want to deny that, but I have nothing to do with it. I can't claim it at all. We lived there for a year and a half. I know nothing about it. But then again, I really don't know much about being an Indian person either. So if questioned, I identify as an Indian person, but I was raised in a medium-sized Midwest town, 400,000 maybe people, and usually most of the brown people that people see are not Indian, more Hispanic. So a lot of people growing up confused me for Hispanic, and they would, speak to me in Spanish, and I'm like, I don't speak Spanish, I'm sorry. And then they would get mad at me for not speaking Spanish, and I'm like, hold on, first of all, no one in my house speaks Spanish, so that's not the language you're looking for. And second of all, I don't speak Punjabi either, so if you want to make fun of me for something, make fun of me for that. So I for a long time it was either people looking at me that I was Hispanic or they didn't know what I was. It was just, what are you? I'm a human being, but what?
And people would ask you that.
Oh, all the time.
What are you?
What are you?
Yeah.
I don't know how to answer that question.
Yeah.
So, and I think even for myself, even though I had experiences with trying to fit in terms of, am I Indian enough for my Indian family, or am I white enough for my Midwestern friends and surroundings, and having a foot in both of those worlds, even though I was knowledgeable and aware of that, it wasn't until I was in college before I had this realization that I had to come to terms with the fact I'm not white. And I could look at my parents and no, but I was I think I tried to assimilate for so long that it was much later that I came to terms with being Indian and American.
What do you think led you to want to assimilate?
That's...
Well, you said there weren't a lot of Indian people around.
I just wanted to be like the people around me. And I don't know if that's because I'm an only child and I had nothing, but just wanted to be like my friends. I don't know. But I was just surrounded by white people and I wanted to be like the people I was around. But that extends beyond just race. I wanted to be able to watch MTV when I couldn't. I wanted to be able to shop at the mall where my parents didn't. want, it was like, maybe that's related to more culture of like, my family, like wanting to not eat at McDonald's or whatever. But but then even when we started to hang out with other Indian families, there was a class differential, where like most of the other Indian families that we were around were, I guess, equally well-to-do, but a little bit more showy about clothing.
They were showier than your family.
Right. And so like I felt like I didn't fit into their world from a class standard. And then I didn't fit into my other world from a race standard. And so it was a little bit of like, I spent most of my childhood trying to figure out where I belonged. Right. But then I would go visit my family in India, and I didn't belong there either. And so it's like, where am I?
How did you not fit in with the white kids? Like, were you referenced as being different in some way, or? I
had a lot of like my neighbor kids that would bring it up. One of the neighbors I grew up with, this is like highlights his ignorance in geography, but every time my mom would call for me, like if we were playing out in the street or their yard or whatever, when my mom would call for me it was time to come in, he would make some weird accented voice and tell me that my mom was calling from Budapest. And I'm like, but that's not India. That's a whole different place. So
that's Hungary, right? Yeah. Budapest is in Hungary?
Right, yeah. So like, I'm not Hungarian. And I think he just picked a place that was elsewhere. And
foreign.
Just foreign.
Yes.
Right. You're not from here. Your mom is calling. Yeah.
The message is you're not from here.
Right, yeah. It was difficult for me even taking my lunch to school because my parents were very big on homemade food all the time. We never went out to eat. Everything was homemade all the time. And so I had lunches from home, and it was always Indian food. And so it's like you're in 3rd or 4th or 5th grade, and you're trying, like everyone is like eating like peanut butter sandwiches when you could have peanut butter in schools, or a square random pizza that tasted like cardboard. And I'm sitting here with this like home cooked Indian meal with like all these spices and scents and things. And it was just like ostracizing kind of.
Yeah. Was there a embarrassment around that or shame that you felt about?
I was definitely embarrassed, but I remember just longing to not be different, to like want the basic, like I wanted taco night and I wanted spaghetti night and I wanted to, like I remember going to McDonald's and not knowing what they served. Like I wanted to be able to go and have all the things that I don't have. I don't want that now. Like I have come full circle all the way back around. But when I was young, like that's all I wanted was that I guess I had idealized the normalcy of like the mainstream culture around me. And so like I that's all I wanted. But clothing, it applied to clothing. I had gone to my cousin's wedding in India when I was in 7th or 8th grade. And I came back with mehndi like all over my hands, and like there was kids in my,
which is super fun.
Yeah. And it was like absolutely, I loved it. It was beautiful. Like it was like this thing. Like I went to my parents, like I go to, when we go, I really want mehndi. I want this to happen. And I came home because it lasts for however many weeks, and someone told me it looked like I had like a disease on my hands, and then 3 or 4 years later, it was like in the magazines, like everyone was doing like colored mehndi or whatever. Like it became like cool. And I'm like, yeah, you guys, like this is not just me. Like I didn't invent this. Like this is a thing like that other people do. So that was, I remember it just being like that. Yeah, like you said, like the messages like you're not from here, you don't belong. Like this is like you're different. But so I don't know if I internalized that or if I sought out that normalcy myself. But it was, I had a cognitive sense all the time of I want to be like my peers. Yeah. But
and you said in college you had something shifted for you.
Yeah. For the longest time, I wouldn't eat Indian food. I didn't want to dress in Indian clothes. I never learned to speak Hindi or Punjabi. Like I was something like I actively rejected, even though my parents tried to teach me. And so then I went to University of Iowa for college, and at the time, like wearing Indian clothes was super popular, and everyone had the skirts and like bangles, and like everyone was like burning like Nag Champa incense, and it was like a thing that everyone did.
And when you say everyone, Indians and non-Indians?
I didn't hang out with Indians. Like, I don't know. Yeah. So like my friend circles were white, like all the time. So, Like, I mean, I was regularly the only brown person in the room. So it was...
So, wow. All your white friends are doing this Indian stuff.
Right, exactly. And I'm the Indian person. They're turning to me and wanting me to explain like the Indian menu to them. And I'm like, do we have to go here? Like, can we go get a burger or something? I want to eat something else. And so then I took a lot of like gender and race classes. And we, like that overlapped a lot of the topics. And I don't remember the exact realization, but I remember having this moment of like, I'm not white. Like, I am not rejecting one or the other, but like I am Indian, like that's who I am, and having to like come to terms and almost like having to come out to myself about like this part of my personality that was very real. I don't think it changed much in my daily behavior, but it was something that I had to come to terms with.
What did that look like, the coming to terms with being Indian? It was I hear it's internal. It was an internal thing.
Yeah, definitely internal. I mean, I don't like anything different. I don't think anyone else would have known what I was going through. I didn't change the way I did my hair, the way I dressed, or anything like that. I think I maybe had more understanding from my parents of like what they've gone through or what they've, like their histories. But I think it was just something like more of like a cognitive struggle for me. But I mean,
did it change who you wanted to spend time with, like your friend group? Did you want to be around Indian people more, or it was more internal?
I don't think I ever had a not wanting to. I think that I don't know. That's a hard question, because I think that for me, it was, I gravitated to people who I felt more intellectually connected with. Not that I don't feel intellectually connected to Indian people as a whole, but it was in terms of like, what kind of music am I listening to, or what are we doing in our spare time, or like, I've always been really big into like concerts and music. So it's like, I'm hanging out with people who are going to those things. I think that had there been Indian people in those surroundings, I wouldn't have steered away from that or necessarily gravitated towards it on purpose. It would have just been another person in my midst, if that makes sense. But it's weird because I had such this realization and this coming to terms with how I saw myself. I often forget that other people don't have to come to that realization. Like, they see me as brown first and a person second, and that I forget that occurs. I recently had a situation where one of my dental assistants was having a sort of a difficult time with me, like an authority, and sort of second guessing my leadership role in at work. And I was discussing it with some other dentists, because at the time I was newer to the profession and I was trying to get some feedback on how to control the situation, how to handle the situation. And one of the other dentists was like, well, maybe she's got a problem working for an Indian dentist. And I was like, never even occurred to me, had not ever crossed my mind that her issue with me might have been race. And honestly, it wasn't even like a gender thing. Like I just thought it was more of an age maturity thing. Like she's a, early, like late teens, early 20s person that may or may not have a hard time dealing with authority in general. But it was, I was definitely caught off guard at the fact that my colleague's first reaction was that she had a problem with taking direction from me because I'm brown and she was not.
Did that impact how you went about managing the employee?
No, because I have no way to confirm nor deny that. And even if that was the case, that belongs to her. I'm not going to take responsibility for her opinion towards that. I can't change it. I'm still going to be brown no matter what you think. So it couldn't have changed anything about how I dealt with it. Like it was a purely clinical professional situation that I dealt with on that level alone. So, I mean,
you mentioned earlier feeling like you weren't Indian enough. What is that?
So, well, being a child of the 80s and fully loving 80s culture, I would go back to India once a year to see my family and be dressing in my mall bangs and my hot pink, like fuchsia square hoop earrings. And like all 80s gear, and I would land in India in Indian culture in a very conservative family, and my family just treated me like I was an alien from another country, which in their defense, I was very alien to their society and their culture and what they knew. Everything that I was raised as normal, quote unquote, about American culture, independence of thought, an ability to speak your mind or speak up, or say no, things like that were not common to my family in India. That's not things that kids did. I don't know if all Indian families have this or not, but there was definitely a habit in my family that when we would all gather like in the living room and we're sitting around talking, like the females in the group would retire to the kitchen and gather the snacks or the drinks or whatever and walk around the room delivering those to people, serving people, and people would very politely take a little spoonful of a snack or take a drink or something and carry on their conversation. But the women weren't part of that. Like it was the men having the conversations and the women's doing the servings. And I never participated in the serving part. Like I would sit with the men and talk. And, you know, the same thing, you know, we would sit around and at the dining room table, like well after dinner was finished, and it was always the men sitting around talking and the women were elsewhere. But that actually corresponded going back to like the Indian culture in America, like the way I was raised. The Indian like parties that we would go to, they would separate that way as well. Like the men would all be in one room and the women would be in another room, and I would always gravitate towards the men's conversation. It was usually something medical in nature or professional, and I gravitated towards that from an intellectual perspective more than some of the other conversations would be more about like raising children or, you know, like other not non-professional,
more
right?
domestic,
more domestic,
yeah.
Right? Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have anything to contribute to that. So from an intellectual perspective, I found myself always sitting with my dad in like the men's room.
Mm-hmm.
So, but to go back, I never really felt like I was Indian enough because I never felt like I was aware of the proper customs of the way people did things when I would visit my family in India. Like I didn't know. When I meet an elder, like, what am I supposed to do? Like, how do I greet you? Like, how would I call you? Like, I don't even know, like, I can't properly pronounce all the different labels of my family members. So I can't just call you all uncle and auntie because that's not proper either. Like, I don't really know, like, what names to call you. I don't know how to, like, physically, do I shake your hand? Do I hug you? Like, do I touch your feet? Like, I'm not quite sure. So I just felt myself being awkward a lot, you know?
I see.
And then I had a cousin who would grill me all the time on every single time I saw him. He would just like corner me and grill me on like, why are you in America? Why is America better than India? Like, why aren't you here with your family? I'm like, dude, I'm 8. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't have an answer for you, but I am where my parents put me. Like, I'm not in charge of this decision. Like, I live where my parents are. That's it. But it was just...
That's a pretty young age to be held to account in those ways.
Yeah, I thought so too. But he didn't have a problem with it. And as we grew up, he tried to recant a little bit and claim that his questions were more inquisitive as opposed to interrogative, but I felt it differently at the time. So yeah, I just feel like when I was there, I didn't know how to be Indian. I didn't know how to be part of the family. And then I would sort of like harbor that guilt, and then I would come back to America and I felt like I didn't know how to be American. And I felt like I was sort of like one foot in both cultures all the time, or not in neither.
In neither, really.
Yeah.
You didn't know how to do all the Indian customs, and also weren't eating McDonald's.
Right.
Yeah.
Or watching MTV.
Or
having sleepovers, or doing things that my friends' families consider were normal things to do.
Yeah.
So.
When's the last time you were in India?
Oh my goodness. My son is 11, almost 12, and the last time I went, he was a year and a half old. So it's been a decade.
So you took your son?
Yes, I took my son at a year and a half old. My daughter's never been. She's 8. And she really wants to go.
She does.
She wants to go so bad. And when I was a kid and I was refusing to learn like Punjabi, like everyone always told me like, oh, your children are going to want this. It'll skip a generation. And they were totally right. My daughter, she loves Indian clothes. She wants to, wear Indian shoes. My son had to... he was in a digital literacy class, and they were practicing looking things up online and stuff like that. And it was a recipe project where they were supposed to look up a recipe, and then they would turn it into their teacher, and their teacher would choose one and make it. So he found a recipe for a gulab jamun, and he wanted, and that's the one he turned
so
in.
Good.
So good. But no one told him to do that. Like, that was his own idea. Like, I love that they have adopted that, and they feel much more comfortable with having a foot in both. Where I guess, like, I was saying, like, I was in neither. They're very happy to have a melded perspective on being like an American and having Indian culture in their history as well.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's great. It's wonderful. But I think I had a lot more fear or apprehension, maybe anxiety, that when it came along with it. I don't know if it's guilt or not feeling like I was enough, but they don't have any of that. To them, it's just, these are really cool clothes, and this is really good food, and I can like it.
You didn't say anything about them like having the pressure to know exactly what they were doing,
right?
That you were subject to,
right? And I think that I have not placed that upon them, so they don't feel that, obviously, from that perspective. But I do feel a little guilty that they don't have a relationship with their family. Like I said, I'm an only child, so I don't have any siblings to share this with my children, but like, I come from a huge family, and so they don't really know all of my cousins' children or my aunts and uncles or any of my extended family. They don't have any of that relationship. I've never had that either, and they don't have it either.
Well, we shouldn't say they don't have any.
Well, not any. That's true. Sorry, they don't have any, but they've
for the record, Manisha's dad. I don't think I introduced this woman.
That's true.
This is Manisha Virdi.
Hi, we did that.
Manisha's dad and my dad are cousins.
Yes.
Yes.
And honestly, even there, I don't even know what the relationship. I mean, we say cousins, but I think that they're first cousins. They're first cousins. So that makes us
That makes us cousins.
Yeah, exactly. Second cousins. Yeah, I've never known how that all
Well, on the Indian side, we'd be brother and sister.
Right. Yeah,
or cousin brothers,
yeah.
brother and sister. I don't know.
Right, exactly. And see that even that like confusion,
right.
I have a hard enough time trying to figure out first and second cousins once removed, or whatever the delineation of that is, and then you add like another cultural terminology into it, and it gets into a whole new thing. But so no, you're right. They do have some relationship, and they have certain. But even we don't see each other all that often.
Right.
And I have some other cousin. I have a cousin in New Jersey who has children. One in Texas who has children. One in D.C. who has a child. And they're all my direct relations. And I hardly ever see them, which means that my children don't have relationships with their children either. So there's that separation that I miss a lot too. But I don't know if that's related to race or just family.
Sure. Do you think you'll take your kids to India?
I would love to. We've talked about it a lot. My daughter wants to go really bad, like I said, and then my son wants to go back. He did an amazing job when we were there. He ate everything. He loved it. He was obsessed with how many people he saw everywhere he looked. But I think he's also really enjoyed that he didn't have to be in a car seat.
Oh yes, no car seats in India.
No car seats. And so he was like, could stand on the floorboard of the car with his hands on the window and just look out the window. He loved that. But I mean, to him, it was just all a fun experience. There was no weight to anything for him. It didn't have to mean anything. It was just people and fun and another lap and another hug and another person to meet and another meal. So it was just that they got to have a good experience with that. But I'd like to take them both back again for sure. We should all go.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Let's plan it.
Why not?
All right.
So I asked you to bring something.
Yes.
What'd you bring?
I brought this necklace. So I have a long conversation in my head about the current conversation about the co-opting of cultures. And I feel like that's something that people talk about a lot. And to me personally, there's a delineation, and it's so subjective, but for me, it's like, are you doing it in an honorable way where you are enjoying the other person's culture, or are you doing it because you want to take it for yourself because you don't have culture of your own to adhere to? So I was speaking before about having one foot in either culture or neither, and I found this necklace on Groupon of all places, and I think it's a fairly famous Indian designer, but anyway, the point is that it's very Indian jewelry, but it's a costume. It's costume jewelry. It's not super fancy, but the style is specifically Indian. And I loved that it was something that, to me, landed in both cultures. It was like they had the Indian characteristics to it, the colors, the feel of it, the beauty of it, like the weight of it, the very large jewelry, the very large pieces. But it was something that was accessible for anyone to order with a Groupon account that was, at a discount for 5 days only. But to me, it sort of symbolized like a blending of the two things. Accessibility of something that a lot of people don't know a lot about, myself included. So I was thinking about what object to bring, and I realized that most of the objects I have are jewelry related, but I think that's what I have held on to. Yeah,
can I touch it?
Sure.
Yeah. It's I love that you talk about the blending and how in your story there was so much of not feelings of not belonging, and how you found through your jewelry to find a way to feel, in like you belong in multiple spaces or in multiple ways.
Yeah. I think I've learned more of that from my daughter, actually, than...
She's been teaching you.
Yeah, she's been teaching me, for sure. Her comfort level with all things, Indian, like just the way she dresses it and mix and matches, like she'll have bangles with regular, and she's not the only one. Like other people do this.
Sure.
It's not like she's invented this or anything, but having it in my direct line of sight,
right.
From someone at a very young age, she's doing it intrinsically. Like no one's told her to do this. She's just with her gut, and I just sort of watch and learn from her.
That's beautiful. Do you feel jealous of her that it comes so naturally? No,
not at all. Not. I mean, she has a whole different experience. She has none of the familial attachments to anything. I don't want to use the word trauma lightly, but it was really difficult for me for a lot of years. Like I struggled with it a lot emotionally. She doesn't have any of that. So for her, it's an adornment. It's just, like she can pick and choose as she sees fit. She looks up to the family that she does know, and she likes to spend time with them, so she can have like that positive attachment to them as well. I think it's great that she has it. I have no jealousy towards it whatsoever. I don't force it upon her, but I love that she has it. So both of them. So.
Well, Manisha, Virdi, do you have any last thoughts you'd like to share today?
No, I don't think so. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for having me. This has been a great conversation.
I'm so glad it worked out.
Awesome. Thanks.